Welcome to The Photographers Create, the podcast that celebrates the imaginative spirit of the modern photographer. Join me, host Allison Hatch, as we embark on a visual journey through the lens of creativity, exploring the captivating world of photography. In each episode, we will delve deep into the minds of innovative photographers, uncovering the inspiration behind their captivating images and the techniques that bring their visions to life. Whether you're a seasoned professional or an aspiring enthusiast, Photographers Create offers a wealth of inspiration and knowledge to elevate your craft. Join me as I shine a spotlight on the artists who redefine the boundaries of photography, one click at a time. Tune in and uncover the artistry behind the lens of the Photographers Create podcast. Welcome to the You Belong podcast, everybody. Today, my guest is Allison Corinne. She is a Virginia maternity photographer who has had quite a journey of travel and different backgrounds that have influenced her style. We aren't going to be talking too much about her for maternity photography today. We're going to be talking about her self-portraiture, which is incredible and so outside the normal realm of what I've been talking about on this podcast. Allison is a Click Pro Elite. I can talk. Winner of Click Magazine, Best Photographer. She has so many different awards. But before I get to our interview, I want to talk about two things. The first one is the Analog Artist Workshop. If you have not heard of that yet, that is going to be a beginner film or creative film techniques workshop that I will be hosting in San Diego on April 27th and 28th. It is going to be a small workshop, and there are two different spots open. One is a student spot. So you'll be coming and learning and absorbing all of the wonderful goodness that we'll be sharing about film and creative techniques, or a teacher spot. So if you are wanting to get your feet wet in the photography education world, this is a great place to start. It is a low pressure, small audience place to teach something film related. So both the teacher and student spots are still available, and we'd love to have you come. And then the other thing is the Film Soup Guide. Well, the Film Soup Guide has gotten a glow up. If you are on my Instagram very often, you know that that's kind of my jam. I wanted to do a little something new with it besides just a beautiful PDF of all the wonderful information that you need to get started with Film Soup. So I decided to add a little bit more and hold your hand just a little bit more and did a quick online course. It is very easy to follow, really fun, tons of information, and that is now available on my website as well. I will be linking everything in the show notes, including Allison's work. Let's get to talking to her. Hi, Allison. Thank you so much for being on with me today. I'm so excited to talk with you about self-portraiture and your photography journey, which sounds like you've been all over the place and done all kinds of things. So I'm really excited to talk to you today.
Thank you so much for having me.
With your photography journey, because I was looking at your bio. Well, first of all, let me back up for the listeners. I found you on Instagram. We connect on Instagram through your self-portraiture. It hit me so hard, and it was spoke to my soul. And I just, you created something that I wish that I had the gumption to create. It was when you were doing your beginning of feminism, womanhood type self-portraits, and they're mind-blowing. So that's how I got connected. But let's back up and talk about your film journey and how you got to what you're doing right now.
Sure. So a friend of mine, a long time ago, bought this camera, a Lumix. It was actually, if not the first iteration of a mirrorless, it was one of the first. And I didn't really know anything about, mirrorless or regular DSLRs, but I was like, this looks awesome in the photos, one of those, your camera takes such good photos. No, she was a great photographer. I decided to get the same camera. It was really cheap at the time. It was a Lumix, I don't know, DNC something or other. And I just played around with it. I learned a little bit of manual on it. Honestly, I think I was probably shooting mostly aperture mode at the time, and I just, it was just my fun camera. And then I had the opportunity to move overseas to London and, was able to travel a lot, and was selling photos from those travels. And I think around the same time, I decided to upgrade to like a Fuji, I think it was the XT1 at that time. And so I got to do a lot of traveling. And while I was living in London, I took some classes and really learned how to do manual and like learned more about the camera and the exposure triangle and everything. And then eventually we came back to the States. And I had my son, and I, wanted to upgrade to a better camera to really capture him. And I wasn't really sure what I was going to do with myself after he was born. And so I decided to kind of take the next step and open a photography business. And for a while, I was doing families and maternity and newborn and headshots and branding. And I eventually just kind of niched down to like, family related things. So really like family portraiture, newborns, maternity. And now I really mostly just do maternity and a little bit of newborns, no families. And then on the side, I do my self portraits. They're probably actually about 50-50, but I don't make any money from the self portraits. So it feels like a side thing. So and that's where I am now. I shoot on 2 Sonys now. Right, exactly, yeah. Oh gosh, so I wish I had some really epic, romanticized story, but the truth is my very first series, which was this 4 portraits called I think it was called COVID Icons. I wanted to learn lighting. I wanted to learn how to use studio lighting, and I was using my son's stuffed animals for a little bit, and I was like, this isn't working. Like I need to step this up. So I was like, I'm gonna get in front of the camera, because I don't think there's any model that I can bore this long, while I'm figuring it out. So and then I used those photos and I turned them into this little series that was kind of like, I think it might have actually been towards the end of COVID, but it was just, those days in COVID were just so like monotonous and boring. It was like, hey, how many loads of laundry are we doing today? Even though we didn't go anywhere and there's no reason these clothes should be dirty. And just, dishes and ordering out all the time. And yeah, it was, so that's how that series came. And then from there, I really enjoyed that series. And I felt like I hadn't planned it too much. Like I kind of got some props and added some things. But the next series I did was Domestic Goddesses, and I did a lot more planning for that. And I felt like it kind of satisfied this, like, I'm a planner and I like to like make lists, and it kind of like scratched all these itches, to be able to make these plans and then execute them. And that's kind of how it evolved from there. And usually it's either something kind of motivates me or inspires me, or there's a technique I want to learn. It's usually one of those 2 things.
You were so unabashed.
Yeah,
so
the
fantastic.
one was actually the COVID Icons one. So that was,
Oh, that's that one. Okay.
yeah. So that was kind of, because the days were kind of all running together. It was kind of this like, oh, it's been 28 days because that's how we mark the time now. Like otherwise the days just run together. And I'm like, oh, got my period again. I guess that means it's been a month. Yeah. So they're very similar. And I think a lot of people like assume they're all one group. So no worries. But yeah, they're actually 2 separate ones. Yeah. The Domestic Goddesses was, I used the kind of like the Greek or Roman gods, which I turned all of them into goddesses. And kind of did a play on that, where they're stuck in their home also during a pandemic. So, oh gosh, I'm trying to remember some of this. So Poseidon is like in her bathtub because
yes, that one is so good.
Yeah. So there's a whole series of those. Yeah. There's a little bit of both for the longer series. Usually what happens is I'll kind of have this idea, like I think Domestic Goddesses, I think I actually was thinking of the word first. I was like, oh, domestic goddess, like, and then, I mean, it must have been like weeks or something. And eventually I was like, huh, that's such a weird, phrase, like domestic goddess. And I know what it was. So originally that one, I wanted to do portraits of postpartum women in like beautiful outfits doing the chore that they hated the most. So whatever their like pain point was. And because of the pandemic, I wasn't able to do that series. And it kind of evolved. And I kept thinking of this like phrase. And then it just kind of evolved into, I was like, oh, goddesses. And then I was like thinking of, the Greek and Roman goddesses. And so I eventually made a list. And this is not all of this is not all of the gods and goddesses, obviously. I think there's like maybe 10. And I chose the 10 that I wanted to do. And then I kind of like figured out how I wanted to portray them, like Hermes, is that how you say it? I'm not even sure.
Mhm.
The messenger, he can't run around, delivering messages or whatever. So instead, she is sitting on the bed, with like all these open laptops and, an iPad and an iPhone and everything and, messaging that way. I totally just lost my train of thought. But so yeah, I kind of just thought through like how I wanted to depict each of them. And then for this one, I really like color, and like not monochrome necessarily, but kind of delivering this overall, it's not even tone, it's more like just having a lot of the same color in the image. And so I kind of assigned each of them a color. And then I kind of just, it evolved from there. And I would just randomly think of like, oh, I want to include this in this particular goddess's image. And I just made a list, and eventually I was like, all right, I got to get started. So I started ordering things. I had to order the trident for Poseidon on Amazon. I needed a crown for Miagros is like I think he's the god of the flies, maybe. And so I wanted like a big crown for her, I did it as a her. And so I just ordering things, and then as things came and arrived, I went ahead and shot them. And that's kind of the same process for most of them. Sometimes I'll just get a random idea, and I'll be like, let's just try it out. And there's no planning. But then other times for the really long ones, those usually have a bit more planning. And it kind of evolves too. Like the one I'm working on right now, I haven't posted any of it yet, but I just started it today. I had this idea to do so my son, a phrase we tell him very frequently is, chairs are for sitting. And that phrase
Five
kind of
boys.
stuck
I
with
get it.
me. Yeah. Like it's not a jungle gym. Can you not destroy the furniture? And so I was kind of thinking, this idea of chairs are for sitting, like people using everyday objects in the wrong way. And so my first idea was actually not involving a chair. It was teacup shoes. I don't know. And I've kind of sat on it for a while because I wasn't sure how to shoot it to look realistic without, destroying my feet if these teacups broke. And I was kind of just obsessing about how I would Photoshop it and stuff. And then it kind of evolved, and I had a couple other ideas. And it's not turning out the way I wanted. So I'm not sure if I'm gonna keep doing it or if I'm gonna change the idea. I'm gonna sit on it for a bit. And that happens sometimes too. Sometimes I get like halfway in the process and I'm like, this is not what I wanted. And then I just sit on them for a while until I figure out like where I want to take it. So yeah, sometimes it just really depends on, what the photo is. Sometimes I just do it. Sometimes there's more planning. Sometimes there's starts and stops. Yeah, it's definitely, it's funny because even in my client work too, sometimes I just like go overboard and I'm like throw all the like tricks at it. And then sometimes I'm like, I just want like a simple, like I did these cicada jewelry. It's not my favorite series, but it's there and it happened. And it's literally just, really like low key lighting and like nothing in post. And then like my most recent series is like the backgrounds are AI, like the whole, like 70% of the photo is AI. I would say generally, I start in my home studio, just from, my personal studio. I try to get the lighting right, for the image I want. So, light direction is really important. And then also, the strength of the light and just making sure it's going to match the end, or whatever I have in mind. And then from there, it's kind of like anything goes, it really just depends on the idea, like the shapeshifter series. My backdrop is I think it's like probably 8 feet wide, which, it seems like it would be enough, but it's not. I mean, you have to extend the whole thing. And so usually there's that. And then because in shapeshifters, there's three of them. I extended my neck in one, and then I extended my arms in another, and my legs in another.
Mhm.
So I had to go in and, well, I had to extend them first, and make sure that, things weren't getting too like weirdly warped or too, what's the word, like blended almost. I wanted to make it look realistic. And then afterwards I had to add in shadows because, the shadows from
Interesting.
those lengthened limbs wouldn't have matched the original shadows. So, I mean, it really depends on the image. I can say like one tool I almost always use, no matter the photo, is the subject select, and then I mask out the background. I mean, almost without fail, that's like a tool that I'll use at some point. And then yeah, lots of layers. It really just depends. Yeah, Photoshop is my friend. I love
Yeah,
Photoshop.
so swap.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I mean, it's just so cool because there's stuff that I just would not be able to do for so many practical reasons. Like, I mean, even the one of Poseidon, it's got like a wave coming out of the
Yes.
bathtub. And like obviously I'm
Yes.
not gonna flood my second floor bathroom, like I don't want
No.
to flood my whole house for this photo. So I mean, stuff like that I just wouldn't be able to do. And then this most recent series, the one that's called In My Own World, I wanted to learn to use the native AI in Photoshop. There's a lot of different,
Okay.
programs and a lot of different AI, but I wanted to learn specifically the native one. And I will tell you, as much as I love Photoshop, it's probably not the best one out there. And it's very tricky to get it to produce what you want it to produce. And you still have to do a lot of editing and stuff. But yeah, I mean, like one of the photos, I'm sitting like in a tower in the jungle, and it's just like, am I gonna fly to a jungle somewhere and find a tower or build a tower? Like, no, like, so this is what I did. And it just kind of like opens up a whole other world of possibilities in terms of like the kinds of images I can make, and the setting for the images and everything, the backgrounds and whatnot, and a lot of props too. I mean, like, I buy a lot of stuff on Amazon, and I don't feel great about it. I'm not crazy about Amazon. I don't like supporting Amazon, but it's the easiest place to find a Poseidon trident. I mean, like, where else are you
Right.
gonna find that? And
Right.
so while I do try to do, buy most of my props so that I can have them done in camera, sometimes it's just not practical, and you have to either buy an overlay or ask AI to create it or whatever. And it just opens up so many more possibilities, for so many reasons. And so yeah, I love it.
You're
I have it
so
open on my computer too, because I was like trying to remember. I'm like, what are these other ones? The shapeshifter.
those are
Yeah,
really
it's really,
like I can see
yeah.
is
Those my
really
like,
cool.
the theme is not Lisa Frank, but it's also not Lisa Frank. So I was like,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
as a kid in the 80s, so peak 90s, this was my era. So it was my getting my Lisa Frank, out there. But yeah, these the In My Own World ones, yeah, I kind of realized that when I'm working on these, I really, like kind of obsess over them a little bit. And so
Okay.
that was kind of the inspiration behind these. And then, also wanting to learn how to use the Photoshop AI. And that's kind of how these came about. And they all have like their own, like this one, you'll appreciate the one where I'm in front of the what are they called? The Northern Lights.
Uh-huh.
And in my own world. And so in each of these, like, it's just kind of describing like this world that I'm in. So this one is like the male gaze has been eradicated. It's like, because it's like it's not for you, dude. It's
Yeah.
for me.
Yeah.
And then there's this other one. You know, it's the orange like cave, the crystal
Mhm.
cave, and that one's in my own world. I'm a magpie in a crystal cave because I love shiny things. I mean, I think they definitely show my core values, if that makes sense. That sounds so pretentious, Jesus. I mean, these are like my own beliefs, and so of course they come out because they're, self-portrait is and art is like an expression of, yourself. So for
Right.
sure, like, yeah, definitely there's some threads of that. There's a whole
Mhm.
series when I was going through IVF and, just being like honest about, the emotions tied to that process. And yeah, I think even like the domestic goddesses, it was, how do they stay empowered while they're in this like situation where they're stuck in their homes kind of thing. So yeah, definitely there's like that thread, of being honest about being a woman and, speaking out, the male gaze thing. I mean, I heard someone else talking about it in one of your previous episodes. And I think when you're photographing women, whether it's yourself or someone else, that's just like a constant theme of, this isn't for you, dude. It's, I think like on the one hand, I mean, I make them for me. I have no like, expectations about it or anything. But I think when you're creating, stuff, especially stuff that's so personal, and then you're putting it out there for people to see, even if you're not pushing it or, like promoting it or whatever, I think like it always feels good when people appreciate it. So, I'm not submitting it to stuff. I think I probably have a little bit of a fear of rejection, but also it seems like a lot of work and I don't know where to start. And it's a whole other thing that I don't want to get into. But yeah, it's nice when people notice it. So, like even if someone just leaves a comment and is like, this is so fun, even if it's nothing like, even if it's like I don't want to say superficial comment, but it's just like, oh, this is hilarious or whatever. Like, it's nice to know that people appreciate it, in their own way. So, I don't submit it.
Totally get it. I love that you're doing it for yourself.
I don't remember which came first, but I definitely made a conscious decision to make my maternity work look sparkly. And I know that's kind of like what does that mean? I don't know. If you see the photos, you're like, okay, yeah, I could see that. I don't know how else to describe it other than sparkly. And I have clients who have requested that I, add more sparkle to their photos. So they seem to describe it the same way as well. I don't remember if I did it for them first or if I did it for myself first, though. I would have to look. But yeah, it's definitely there's some influence because especially like my outdoor maternity work, I always add like, sparkles for lack of a better definition. And then it's funny because then I do like in-home maternity sessions and those are clean. I don't touch those at all. I really just
Interesting.
And it's funny because some of, that shapeshifters one, I feel like that looks like my in-home work. And then if you go up to like the in my own world images, that looks more like my outdoor work. And it's weird. I feel like a little, I don't know, Jekyll and Hyde, or I don't know what the rate, but yeah, it's like I have this like really sparkly side, but then I also really like these really clean, well lit images, or, images with really pretty lighting.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't remember, but yeah. I definitely think there's definitely some
that's awesome.
Yeah,
Your client work from your personal work.
It's not straightforward, especially the ones outdoors you can really see. I add in a whole ton of like whatever you want to call it. But I think like, I started adding in a tiny bit of AI in some of my maternity, but it's meant to be really seamless. It's meant to be not noticeable. And I think for the most part, I've succeeded in that. The overlays are a whole different story. And like the sparkle part, obviously that's added in. But there's some areas where like I filled in some flowers or took things out of the backgrounds, and that all gets made very easy with AI. But I try to keep it a little more subtle. So there's definitely some crossover, and like knowing how to use the AI definitely helps. So I'm working on it in my own self-portraits because it's not a perfect science yet. But yeah. There's some carryover in both of them.
Yeah, about a complete.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This was really fun.
While it uploads.